All right.
All right.
Put that in there. We're talking to ourselves, folks. And I've got to do the streams.
Ah, yes. The all-important streams.
Okay. Line 31, I added one related to Claude.
Cool.
So,
Okay, great.
okay, now I'll add the streams.
Related to Claude. Yeah, see? Okay, so it did it. Chrome did it. This time I went there, and I'll show you what I see. This is what I see when it does this. I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is most of the time, this is what I see when I try and load an archive link in Chrome. Welcome to Nginx. If you see this page, the server is successfully installed and working. Further configuration is required. What does that mean?
God.
If I go to Safari and do this link, it'll load normally. And it's not like an ad blocker. I've turned all, I made sure that all that's off. So it's not like a script thing. I have no idea. I don't even know where to begin with it. It's like, okay, is this a cookie thing or,
Might be.
Further configuration is required. What? Like, okay, what? What is required of me? Hey, Daniel. Welcome.
Hi, Daniel. Okay.
Our recurring fan for our live show. Always good to have you here, Daniel. Can always count on you. Ask ChatGPT. That's not a not a bad idea.
I'm reconnecting to Facebook.
So let's see here. So
okay. Good. Hello, folks on Facebook and Twitter at 8X.
Let's see here. Almost there, y'all. Okay. So then I will just have that be a screenshot. Okay. Well, it is the top of the hour. Jeff has a full day on Zoom today. And by Zoom, you mean just remote video.
Yeah.
Because actually, you do Zoom into Twit. It is an actual Zoom connection.
Yes, that's a Zoom. That's right. That's a Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah. I had considered switching from StreamYard to Restream, which would use Zoom ISO in order to feed into it. The problem.
Oh, that's okay. Right.
After I bought the full year because they were having a Black Friday thing, and I got an itchy trigger finger. I was like, okay, so I will. After I bought it, I realized what I should have known prior, which is that they don't do local recordings. It's all cloud based. And that makes me a little nervous. I know that Twit isn't relying on Restream for their recordings anyways. They're using it for the send the stream to all these places thing.
Yes.
Is my understanding. So anyways.
Well, they don't. So they don't do local recording because I'm zooming into recording. Twit. Well, I'm zooming.
They do local recording. They do have the local recordings, or rather, I think maybe I'm not sure exactly how it works. If it's Zoom ISO that holds on to them or whatever, they do have access.
Zoom ISO
to
is different. Okay.
I don't know.
And one of us just froze.
Me? Am I back?
You're back.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, and in fact, I'm going to close this collection of windows because it was a lot of stuff that I had open there, and it probably makes sense for me to just get rid of it. Okay, so that's gone.
Hello, Mark from Huntsville. Thanks for joining in. Tay, good to see you. Daniel, we said hello.
Yes, indeed. All right, cool.
So
well,
ready to go.
Mark, Tay, Daniel, and everyone else that's starting to pile through, everyone stand by. We're going to get this show started. Our last AI Inside Live for the year. We do have 2 special episodes, Christmas and New Year's, actually, because of the way that AI Inside falls on both of those holidays. So those are going to come out as normal, but they aren't going to be live events. So just keep that in mind. We'll be back in the new year with live stuff. So Jeff, let me put you to the backstage here in a second. Actually, one more thing. I need to make sure I'm all
He's been
set.
talking to himself a lot today. That's okay. He's doing all right. He's just getting older. You know, it happens to you.
I am. I'm getting old. Okay, I'm going to put you on the backstage. I'm going to switch over to my brand thing where it plays a video, apparently. Where is it? There it is. Okay, cool. All right. I'm not talking to myself. I'm talking to the many people who are connected live right now. That's what I like to tell myself anyways. All right, everybody, stand by. Here we go. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the final live episode of AI Inside for 2024, which is not to say that we won't have episodes next week and the week after. That is Christmas Day and New Year's Day. There will be episodes. They're pre-recorded. We've got those in the can, so you can expect to get them. You just can't watch live. But if you are here live, welcome. I'm Jason Howell, one of your hosts of AI Inside, joined, as always, by my friend Jeff Jarvis. How you doing,
Hey,
Jeff?
boss. How are you?
Awesome. Happy to see you. I
you.
really can't believe that it's the end of the year and that we're already at this point.
And we're going to
where
have
it's
not
like
one, but as Jason said, 2 year-end wrap-ups because we were going to make one and it had so much we made it into 2. So that covered both Christmas and New Year's.
I mean, it was your excellent idea. I have to give you full credit for that because it didn't occur to me. But out of it, essentially, we skipped Thanksgiving. And instead, we had so much stuff when we were looking back at the year for, the world of AI. We had so much stuff there that we were like, this is kind of 2 episodes. So we've got kind of 2 back-to-backs along the same topics and, different aspects of AI. So, yeah, thank you for that idea. It's really great.
And we get 2 weeks off. Yay.
Yeah, we
but
get 2 weeks off.
But you don't because
Exactly.
you're going to watch.
Yes, indeed. Well, maybe not on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. If you do, man, you are dedicated and we love you.
It's a way to get away from the family.
Yeah. Yeah, you probably should spend, first at the top of the pyramid is your family and then it's AI
Then
Inside.
us. Yeah.
Speaking of support, thank you so much for your support. Not there because that is wrong. I have the wrong thing that I'm showing here. Okay, if you're watching the video version, sometimes I'm a human and I make mistakes. Patreon.com/AI Inside Show is where you can go to, share your support of the show. We've been doing this for almost a year now. I really can't believe that. And there is no way on earth that we could even do this show without you. You have been driving the ability for us to do this for a full year, and we want to continue. We want to grow. That's our plan for 2025, and we can't do it without you. So thank you. Patreon.com/AI Inside Show. Friend of the show, Dan Patterson, is a patron. We're calling you out, Dan. You were on what episode was Dan on? He was early. He was like episode 7, I want to say 6. Blackbird AI. So Dan, thank you for supporting and for being a guest way back when. Good to have you here. And then if you are watching live, like I said, this is our last live of the year, but just go and subscribe. That way you won't miss the 2 episodes that we have coming up. AIinside.show. Then you'll be subscribed and you'll get those. And then, of course, in the new year, we'll start back up with our lives hitting the YouTube channel. Which is youtube.com/@JasonHowell, which is my name. Yeah, I'm still working on getting a channel specific to AI Inside, but hey, got a lot on my plate, y'all. Real quick, before we get into the news, I wanted to float this by you, Jeff, just to kind of get your take on this. Last night on Android Faithful, we were talking. Half the news, had to do with AI. We spoke with Shahram Asadi from Google's XR division, who leads the Android XR effort. We had a really wonderful conversation with him about that. And of course, all the AI that's interlinked in that we talked about last week. And one topic that came up outside of that interview was AI fatigue and the fact that some people, let's call them the normies out there, right? Not the people who are so dedicated and driven by AI that they know everything. Probably a lot of the people that watch and listen to this fall in that category. But there are a lot of people out there that are just sick of hearing about artificial intelligence. If it touts AI, they're immediately disinterested. And I think the thought that I had during the show, and this is what I'm curious to get your take on, is that I envision that there will be a time, and I don't know if it's sooner or later, where the technology itself, where artificial intelligence is a thing that needs to be like pounded into our skulls every single time a new thing comes out. Oh, by the way, AI. At some point, that's going to fade out. And we're going to get to a point to where it's just, we have a new feature, and this feature is really cool. And not, we have a new feature, and it's based on AI. That's what makes it cool. What's your take there?
My first thought is the fatigue that I am suffering right now is drone fatigue. I am so sick of all the talk about drones on TV.
Yeah.
I'm in New Jersey where they actually are above us. So that's point one.
Yeah.
Point two, I think you're actually right. There's a lot of stories about adoption curves, right? And there's something going around cool technologies. And the risk is, could AI become the next NFT or blockchain? Could it be the thing that people are so sick of, and it gets so many cooties from the AI boys and their stupidities? I don't think so, because I think it's unlike NFTs. It's impressive and useful, but I think you're right, Jason. I think that it will fade in the background, and I'll go a step further here. So I should bring my books over. In the Gutenberg parenthesis, I talk about. Do I have one? No, I don't nearby. I talk about obviously the adoption of technology in terms of print. And we've talked about this in terms of the responsibility matrix. Is the technologist responsible, or the intermediary, or the user responsible? And these are curves that I think things will go on. What's different about AI is that, in a sense, the technologists replace themselves with it. The technologists always fade into the background. Print at first was a technology, and you needed the technologist to do it. Then you just hired somebody who prints. No big deal. Radio was a technology. A telegraph, same thing. And then it became everyday and no big deal. And the technologist fades in the background. And then what becomes interesting is what we do with the technology. And the way I pointed out in print, it took 150 years after movable type with Gutenberg before we saw tremendous innovation with print. The invention of the modern novel with Cervantes, the essay with Montaigne, the market for printed plays with Shakespeare, and the newspaper. Right? Well, we're not going to wait that long now, but still, I think there's time. But what's different here again is that you don't need to be a technologist to use this technology.
Right.
And you do need to be one, obviously, to create a model, certainly. But the model is made for you to then tell it what you want to do with no technology expertise whatsoever. So the technologists are obsoleting themselves quicker, I think, than other technological introductions. So I think you're right. We'll get bored of AI PR. We'll definitely get bored of AI boys and their overblown promises. But if the tools remain useful, we'll use them, and we'll just assume it's AI.
Bam. Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at too. Like you mentioned NFTs, and I think, as a comparison, I think there are a lot of people who are on the I'm sick of AI, camp, who might make that comparison thinking that they actually do compare one-to-one. But I think the real big difference is, when I look at NFTs, a large reason why I think those went nowhere is because they were incredibly confusing right out of the gate. Like there was never any clarity about them necessarily. You almost had to already buy into certain ways of thinking in order to really understand NFTs. And two, that usability, that usefulness, NFTs never did anything for me. Never really had the benefit or the potential to do anything for me. AI, whether people realize it or not, they're using AI in certain ways. And it's improving the products that they're already using, whether they realize that's AI or not. The usefulness is there. They might not even realize, know that they're using it. And so I do think that they're very different.
Yeah, and I think that I made this point about Google over time. I think they didn't. I don't blame them for this, but they didn't. I'll put it this way: they didn't get enough credit for the AI advancements that they had. Going back to primarily, I think, of translation. Translation was a huge leap when they saw how to do it differently, and it scaled in a way that they hadn't predicted, and it was a new model for computing. And all that Google has done with AI, and then along comes ChatGPT, and it's forgotten. which is a shame in a way, I think, because now they're trying to catch up, and that makes you do stupid things when you catch up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a really great way to lead into our first story, which, for lack of a better top story, I mean, we might as well talk about OpenAI and its continuation of its ship miss thing, which, I got to give OpenAI credit. Pretty smart to do this release schedule around ship miss because holy cow, it continues. It's a daily march to what they announced next, and the amount of big features and products that they've actually released this month. It's it's been pretty interesting to follow. But a few things since last week's show. There is, of course, their search engine, which their search product, let's say, maybe not a search engine, but search product that we talked about a month or two ago, I think. And now it's available for free for users. You just got to be logged in order to use it.
And it has some options in how it works. They did a video for this as well, as they have every day. And it's seen as a clear slap at Google, along with Perplexity that's doing search. They're all doing search. At the same time, Google's under fire for antitrust around search. They have a raft of new competitors in search. I'm still a little dubious until I get enough experience with these, because again, we know that generative AI has been really bad with what they're called hallucinations, with the lack of facts, with the randomness it enters in. So it's going to take some time for me to play with this and see how well this works. And is it really generative AI, or are they just fitting an old-fashioned search engine into it? Does it just call on an old routine that isn't really that fancy and new? It'll be interesting to see as I play with each of these how that works.
Yeah. I mean, in my interaction, it really seems like, to your last point, it's kind of like a search product built into the AI tools that we're using. Like, I don't think of it, even though a lot of people will say now, I go to ChatGPT or I go to Perplexity and I never go to Google anymore. When I would have gone to Google, now I go to these things. So it seems like a replacement. And I kind of think of them a little bit differently. If I go to Google, it's because I'm looking for a specific thing. If I go to a search product like ChatGPT or Perplexity is the one that I use, it's because I want to get context around a certain thing. And if I didn't have the search product built into the tool, then I'd be doing the same thing. I'd just be doing more heavy lifting to make it happen. I'd go to the pages that I wanted to pull in and copy the text, and I'd paste it into a doc, and then I'd feed that into Perplexity, and I'd say, give me context around this, which in my mind is essentially what these products are. It's like, tell me about Android XR. Okay, we'll go out there, we'll find some articles or some sources that know about Android XR, and we'll bring it in. All right, now what do you want to know about Android XR? Because I've synthesized all this stuff, and that's kind of what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which Google is doing now, and I was dubious about that, and I find myself floating to the first thing I read, which is often the AI summary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Even though we know that they are not always correct, but they're correct, at least my experience for in my daily use, correct enough. And often I can sniff out when they're not, Yeah. So I have that. And I think a lot of people do too. Another thing that OpenAI announced was projects. And this is for organizing and grouping into workspaces. So you can take conversations, your files, your custom instructions. In some ways, this reminds me of Perplexity's Spaces functionality, though in this case is actually a bit more powerful. And actually, this article at VentureBeat compares it more to NotebookLM, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well, minus all of the podcasty type functionality. But building a chatbot, building a virtual assistant, a tool that's specific to a very specific domain, and integrating that with programming libraries, frameworks into apps, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it's really a competitor to NotebookLM, which again we'll get to later. But it is interesting. Spaces that when all this started, you'd go in and have a dialogue with the chat, and then it was forgotten by both, and there was nothing to build upon. So I think this is an effort to A, build upon, and B, ingratiate itself into our workflow, which is important as well.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. And then finally, just
So
real quick,
breaking here.
oh yeah, go for it.
Did you? I just put this in. So the 10th day of shipmass just went up. The video's not up yet, or it was live and it's not up again. But I saw the label was 1-800-ChatGPT.
Oh my goodness.
So
is it April
a report
Fool's?
Nope.
Nope.
It rolled out a new way to talk to the chatbot through the phone. U.S. users can dial the number for 15 minutes of free access via phone per month. Anyone dialing globally can access the number via WhatsApp. So I don't know, Jason, should we try to, can you hold your phone near the microphone? Should we try it?
I could certainly try here. Let's see here.
This could be bad demo mojo, but
here.
probably a lot of people are trying it as well.
Yeah, for sure.
It's 1-800-242.
GPT.
Oh, you got it. Okay. I always hate doing the letters.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm ChatGPT, an AI assistant. Just so you know, our conversation may be reviewed for safety. By continuing this call, you agree to OpenAI's terms and privacy policy. So, how can I help you today?
Well, hi, ChatGPT. I'm calling you on a telephone, and I'm wondering, are you busy today? Do you have a lot of people calling to use the 1-800-ChatGPT service? What can you tell me about that?
I'm all yours right now. I can handle multiple conversations at once, so there's plenty of me to go around. What's on your mind today?
What is the foundation of your being? Is it GPT-01, or can you tell me a little bit about the technology behind you?
I'm built on GPT-4 technology, which is a type of AI model known as a large language model.
Okay, yeah.
It's designed to
I know all about that. Can I interrupt you instead?
Of course. What's on
You can
your
ask it
mind?
about phone equity, phone etiquette.
Oh,
Sure,
yeah.
go ahead.
Tell me a little bit about phone etiquette, because apparently I'm really bad at it.
No worries, I've got you covered. A few quick tips. First, always introduce yourself at the beginning of the call.
Okay.
Second, listen actively and don't interrupt. Third,
Okay, yeah,
speak
I'll
clear-
make sure and do everything that you said there. I will follow it to a T, even though I just interrupted you. Okay, I'm good. I don't know that. Do we have anything else to tell ChatGPT?
No.
No. Okay, we're going to hang up now, but I think you're great. Bye-bye. Okay, how many people do you think are actually going to call a ChatGPT? I just don't see it.
No, but you know, in my car, right? I have Android Auto, and I have a button on the steering wheel for the speaker, and I hit it, and I can say things to it. That's which to me is more of a voice activated world than the devices we had in our homes, the Matames and all that stuff. I guess it's their desire to get into that. If it's a very chatty interface, I guess it's another way to demonstrate how chatty it can be.
Yeah, or actually, you know, we were just talking about people who see AI as like this out there thing, you know, this thing that has nothing to do with them, and is inaccessible and everything. And, you know, maybe even the idea of going to a web page and opening up a chat and, you know, thinking about something to say. This encourages you to use your voice for these things, and maybe it reaches people who are a little bit more averse to going to a web page like this. I don't know. That's an interesting.
And I guess
one.
if you're going to wear AI glasses and all that, it'll become more of your habit to speak to it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, it will. Yeah, and you know, AI glasses. Now that I'm thinking about it, OpenAI, Altman working with Johnny Ive. That's probably what's on the horizon, right? At some point, that must be what they're working on.
But another way to look at this, Jason, is no one ever answers the phone anymore. So if you get really lonely, the only person who's going to answer the phone anymore is the fake one at ChatGPT. You can always call them.
At least you always have ChatGPT.
You always have
ChatGPT is always there for you. Or is it Claude? We'll talk about that a little bit later. Claude might be there for you a little bit more satisfyingly than OpenAI. ChatGPT. Google doesn't. Thank you for putting that in, by the way. I'm happy that we got that in there. That's an interesting one.
Right before we got on the show, I thought, I better see what the day 10 is. And then the video wasn't up yet. And then I went back and it says replay coming soon. But the title of it was 1-800-ChatGPT. So that made it easy to figure out.
I envisioned some snarky headlines announcing that news. I haven't looked yet, but I'm sure there are some disgruntled tech journalists out there that are like, oh my God, give me a break. So we'll see what those headlines say. Google, not wanting to be left out in the dust, continues to push its own avalanche of AI updates. Of course, last week we talked about Gemini 2.0. We talked about Project Astra. We talked about agents. And this week it has to do with video and photo, among other things. After the break here in a few, we'll talk about another kind of update. But here we're talking about a VO2 and Imagen 3 or Imagen 3. I never know how to say that. Is it Imagen? No. Imagen? I don't really know. Anyways, Imagen 3, not a whole lot you could say about that. They put it in their blog post. Brighter images, better composition, more diverse styles, greater accuracy, which, I mean, how much more can you say? Basically, all you're saying is things look better. When it comes to the images. Yeah. I don't know what more you can say about that. In the image generation, yeah, I feel like things are, to a certain degree, are plateauing at a point. They all look pretty good, but they also still have those tells. So maybe that's it.
Uncanny Valley, they're also short, and I'm curious what kind of compute it's going to need to make the first movie out of this, or even the first TV show.
Yeah, so Imagen or Imagen is still images. VO2 is the other part of this, and this is where things still have a lot of room to really grow and get even more interesting. Here in this case, VO2 can now do up to 4K resolution, and my understand that's pretty impressive. My understanding is if you're doing 4K, you get up to 8 seconds of generation time. But I think they also said up to a minute of generation time. So I don't know if the minute is applied to 1080p or what, but that it used to be that it was like a 3-second thing. And now we're getting that extension.
Right.
Trained.
But I wonder that's got to be an exponential increase in compute because it's got to hold on to this stuff. And the possible error rate of not knowing that you can't walk through a wall is greater.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, these look good. We're looking at
they really do look good. Like this one of the beekeeper surrounded by a swarm of bees. Like if you lock onto one of the bees, I mean, I realize they're moving really fast, but this looks pretty real to me.
To me, at this length, there's just no question we are going to see huge amounts of commercial advertising using this.
100%. Yeah.
The one thing that I moderated a panel at the Bertelsmann Investment Group a year ago on this topic, and the ad people in the room said they were very cautious about public use because of fear that they would get sued because of how the models were trained and was it copyrighted and are they going to get in trouble. So a first copyright safe model, whatever that means, because it's not really set here, and we're going to find some more news about that too today, I think will just be glommed onto by Madison Avenue.
Yeah, very interesting. I like when I see things like this, I think we are kind of at a point to where it would really be great if the AI companies, and I'm sure eventually they'll either be compelled to do this or they'll start to do it just to gain trust, but start telling us a little bit about this data set. How are you getting here? Are you filling, are you training your models from public domain? If so, like, what is the domain of the public domain? Like, where did that come from?
Right,
you know what I mean? Like, I think people really do truly want to know what the source of this stuff is, because there's a large contingent of people that simply won't use it because they assume it was collected unfairly.
Well,
however you define that.
You wisely didn't put it in the rundown, but it's worth mentioning because I think it was Sutskever said that we've reached peak data in the way AI is built. And basically they're saying there's no more data to be had. So it's all going to be synthetic data, which we've talked about before, which I hadn't thought of this till this minute. It's not just a play to get more data to train on. It's also a way to make your own safe data. Now, I think that it's going to be more questionable because it has even less of a tie to reality. And when you choose to make it, you're setting those parameters of what you're making. And that obviously includes biases. But I think we're probably, just as we're getting into the peak fight about people using data for training, I think we're going to find a lot less use of data for training.
Yeah, interesting. Love to get someone on, I think, at some point who is really knowledgeable about the idea or the concept of synthetic data, and to
Yeah, I would too, because I don't get it.
Pick their brains about that.
Yep,
I'll have to do
I
some
agree.
digging and see if I can find someone. And if anyone out there has someone in mind that they think would be great for a conversation like that, contact at aiinside.show, or you can go to our webpage. We have a contact form there. Let us know, because I think that would be a really fascinating conversation. I would love to learn more about that.
Well, I would imagine too, there's going to be companies that are specialized in making synthetic data to spec.
Oh yeah. They already exist. They have to, I imagine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're out there. They gotta be. And then finally, just real quick, Google did also announce a new tool called Whisk, which is kind of an experimental thing, which essentially allows you to take. It's using images to create images. So you'd have one image that you feed it for the subject. So this person. You'd have another image that defines the scene, and then another image that defines the style. So as you see, if you're watching the video version, that guy, pick your scene, or you can roll the dice and it'll choose a scene for you, you know, this kind of like style. Is it anime? Is it whatever it is? And it squishes all that stuff together and makes you an image or assortment of images that fall into line with that. And then you can go in and you can pick pieces of the image and redefine them. So in this case,
That's good.
this guy's suit, turn it pink or whatever the case may be. And, you know, it's Whisk because you're mixing all this stuff up, I imagine is where Google's going with that.
Into a froth.
Into a whipped cream of artificial intelligence. Interesting stuff. Yeah, the creativity aspect. Hopefully someday we'll talk to some guy about creativity and AI. It's bound to happen.
Yep.
All right, let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we've got another update to a Google product that we talk about a lot on this show. That's coming up in a second. NotebookLM. Have you used NotebookLM like for any of your work? I find myself using it more and more the more I understand it.
I am. I was involved in proposals for a university program, and there were two people's programs. One of them put some of it into ChatGPT, and the stuff was but there were like 4 or 5 versions of this proposal. And so I finally said, oh, heck with it. I'll put it in NotebookLM. And I gave it instructions. I said, emphasize this more. And the first sentence that came back, I couldn't beat. It was perfect. It was better than I would have done. It was exactly what I wanted. Not the whole rest of the thing, not necessarily, but It was very impressive how it took the instruction and the data available and used it. So it's the best to me proof of concept application of AI that we have now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's super flexible, it's super powerful. The interface makes a lot of sense. Once you spend like 30 minutes with it just to kind of get a lay of the land and everything, it makes a lot of sense. They now pushed out an update that actually changes it to a 3-panel layout. So one panel you would have your sources, another panel you'd have your actual chat, and then another panel you'd have is like your studio panel, so you can kind of refine. Actually, this is probably a better image of that. Sources on the left, kind of your chat area in the center where you ask the questions, where it gives you kind of some of the information. And then the studio is kind of a place where you can kind of expand upon that, or they have, some buttons. You could press a button and turn this information into an FAQ, or turn this information into a study guide or a briefing documentary, or put it into a timeline format and stuff. And it's more and more, I think we're seeing, Canvas is kind of along these lines. We're seeing more of these interfaces that aren't just a chat window, but actually kind of a workspace within to work and to kind of move your information in and out while still leaning on the power and the benefit of the tools themselves.
And it's more iterative. You can edit it. You can give it new instructions as you go. We're gonna show you another application at the end of the show that does the same thing. And I think that's really important. Yeah. You can't just say, okay, leave it. Here's what I got for you, and then start over again. You got to take what it is and be able to iterate with it. And I think that matters. So Stephen Johnson, who we've had on, who is the editorial director of NotebookLM, wrote that post. It's worth noting, as we did last week, that the 3 founding team members of NotebookLM have left for a startup.
That's right.
So we're going to see a lot of competition in this field, but this is a really good push. And the fun thing that NotebookLM did in this rollout is that you can enter into the conversation in the podcast.
Uh-huh.
So you make an audio, as we've talked about before in the show, but then at some point you can act like it's a call-in. It's not just a podcast; it's a call-in talk show, and you can tell it that you want to enter in and ask a question. And so they have a brief demo of that.
Yeah, that was interesting. I played a little bit with that, and it's playing the podcast. Put that in air quotes, playing the podcast back. And then I hit join. They're like, oh, we have a caller. Hello, welcome. It was hilarious. It was like, wow, this is at the same time cheesy and intriguing, right?
Yes.
It's kind of like
exactly.
the perfect balance between both.
That's kind of AI today. Cheesy and intriguing.
All at the same time. Yeah.
Yep.
Totally. But yeah, it's neat. It's neat. The more I remember to use NotebookLM, the more I think of new ways to use it the next time. And that's how I know it's a tool that kind of has my imagination and, starting to really understand what I find it to be good for, which is kind of error and fact checking of stuff that I've come up with on my own or in other tools. And, just it has a really nice kind of way of presenting what it finds when you feed it information. When I feed it information, I say, fact check this against these sources. Am I right if I say this or whatever? And it gives it at first glance, it gives what seems like a wall of text, but it's formatted to a point to where it gets really comprehensive as you read through it. It's like, okay, I feel like it did a better job. Some of the other tools like ChatGPT, you open it up and you do something and you feel like you get that very banal, basic kind of like output. And I feel for whatever reason with NotebookLM that it feels more comprehensive. I don't know.
Right.
Good from that perspective. UK government proposed new copyright exemptions for AI companies to use copyrighted material freely for model training. This is really interesting. There's 2 stories that kind of fall into this, but this is the first story. Creators have the ability to opt out or, quote, reserve their rights. So you're kind of in until you tell them no.
I found this really interesting in a time when almost all regulation is anti-technology and presumes the worst. This is, I think, already people are yelling at me online because they're stealing my soul. But, and I get the arguments, but I think this is really enlightened. So all it is simply is saying that there's an opt-out rather than an opt-in for training, not for quoting, not for major use, but for training. I think it's important, because as I've long said on the show, there's a right to learn and a right to read. And not only journalistic companies have that right, but so should AI companies. But it also says we're going to end up with better models if we do this.
For sure.
If the model makers have to go over and pick and choose, we're going to end up with more biased and worse models that are in turn going to create more problems down the line. So I think a forward-thinking way to do this is what the UK government, and I would say in a rare fit of wisdom, has done here. And it's just open for discussion. It'll probably get changed. They'll get yelled at by every author there is. There'll be much gnashing of teeth and beating of breast from various associations of writers and journalists. But it's the right way to start because it gives you the right to say, no, I don't want to be used. Okay, you can do that. And it's a robots.txt that has to be followed under this, by law. So that's a strengthening of rights in that sense. But it also says that you don't have to get explicit permission to teach the machine how to talk. And a machine that can talk is an interesting and important thing these days. So I think this is really forward-thinking and smart. Already, we are seeing major complaints from writers' unions and such. But I think it's good.
Yeah. When you said that about robots.txt, that helps me when I think about this. Because I find myself conflicted by it. And the next story that I found, I actually discovered this morning because I opened up YouTube Studio, and sure enough, I got this little message that took me to an FAQ about opting into third-party training for my videos on YouTube. And so, I read through that, and then I looked it up, and sure enough, yesterday, this was, news that YouTube creators, as we're seeing on the ZDNet article, can now opt into third-party AI training. So Google doing the opposite way, basically saying, if you're okay with it, you can tell us yes, and we will include your content in AI training. And, and then I put it into this context where I'm very invested in the content that I'm creating right now. And I was hesitant to opt in. But then when I think about it, I'm like, but what am I worried about? That an AI is going to out me? Or like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the fear is there, but when you do create something, I can understand why people are hesitant initially to say, sure, go to town. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's an emotional thing. I'm reading an academic book right now called American Literature and the Culture of Reprinting. I read all the fun stuff, and it's actually fascinating. I don't mean to make light of it by Meredith McGill, and if you're interested in this topic, it's really, really interesting because what it says is, before 1891, America did not have an international copyright, and so publishers in the U.S. could take anything from Britain or anything around the world and translate it, and publish it in the U.S. and not pay anybody. And Charles Dickens came over and personally lobbied trying to get rid of that because he wanted to get paid for his famous work, of course. Some publishers would pay Dickens just to be nice or to get the plates or to try to have some relationship so that others wouldn't do it. But there was no copyright. And what this book goes into, is interesting to me, is that it led to a flourishing of literature in the U.S. There was more material to read. There was more out there. And to me, there's an analog here to this question of AI. And part of the legal basis before the 1891 copyright was the view that when you chose to, I'll do it this way, handwriting was seen as ultimately private. If you wrote out something, that was yours because it was your handwriting, it was your labor, it was your words, your thinking, and there was no question of the ownership. But once you chose to have it printed, the public had some right to it, had an interest in it, because you were choosing to make it public. And in doing so, it entered into a larger, we would say today, ecosystem of information and culture. And that you were relinquishing some of your rights in doing so for the good of the culture. And the copyright was an effort to limit. In one view, you might, in your handwriting, you had a perpetual right to this. So copyright didn't grant you a right in print. It limited your right in print to the length of copyright. It's a really different way to look at copyright. So if you make that an analogy to AI, you put something on the web, you put something out there, anybody can buy your book and read it, buy your newspaper and read it. They can learn from it. They can use it. That's part of the point of all this. Only the treatment of it, only the quotation of it can be copyrighted. So then it can lead to a flourishing of culture through AI if we think about it the right way. And that's again why the UK thing. Now, for your in terms of your own reaction to this, Jason, it's interesting. On the one hand, if you did something so unique, only you do it, right? And the AI found you're the only one who did it. And then when somebody asks a question related to what you do, it comes up with the answer you gave because you're the only one who does it. Then that, I think, would be cause for resentment because it does duplicate what you do.
That would feel directly impactful. Yeah.
But how much of what any of us do is unique?
Totally.
Right? And this show is us exactly doing what AI does. We are reading others' news. We try to credit it. We try to be fair to it, but we're doing exactly what AI does. Maybe dumber, you might say, but we're doing the same thing. And so it's hard for us, I think, then to say, no, AI, don't you do that to us because we're doing it to everybody else.
Yeah, so true. What I need to do is I need to clip that like last couple of minutes and set that to the side on my desktop so that every once in a while I replay it for myself because sometimes I forget this. We have these conversations and they make so much sense. And then I'm presented with a situation like this and I'm like, whoa.
It's mine.
But
It's
that's
all
so
mine.
true. No, you're so wise in that perspective. I totally agree. As you spell that out, that makes complete sense.
But I had writers when I praised this UK thing. I had writers yell at this one woman got mad at me and went on. You're going to give away your book, okay? I said, yeah. You can. I'll be happy to give you the book. You can read the book. It's okay. You're going to learn from it. It's all right. That's what I do. I read other books. That's how it happens.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, this is happening in the UK as they're going forward. I mean, it's confirmed to be, or is this a proposal?
No. This is the beginning of public consultation. So this is just, it's kind of a policy question with a presumption put out there to react to. So there's going to be plenty of reaction.
To see how that plays out. And of course, if this were to happen, the influence that has on how others go down this road. There's a lot to learn.
It's very different from the out of the gate presumption here is so different from what everybody else is doing, right? When I testified before the Senate Commerce Committee subcommittee, the senator, the chair of the committee, was yelling at me and saying, well, he didn't yell, but he scolded me and said, "You're going to expand fair use so much there's no copyright left." And I said, "You're going to expand copyright so much there's no fair use left." And I've quoted that in the show before, but that's the argument we're going on right now. And his presumption from a policy perspective is, no, technology companies shouldn't be able to do any of this. And the lobbyists, no, stop them. And I was the only one in the room who said, actually.
Interesting.
Because I'm a jerk and I do that.
Fascinating. Well, how do you all feel? Contact at AIinside.show. We are going to read some emails at the end of this episode, and it's something that we're going to play around with in the year 2025. So, send us some of your love, and we'll maybe include it in the show, and it can spark more conversation along this line. Put this story in last minute. It's about Nvidia's new supercomputer dev kit. They call it the Jetson Nano Super Developer Kit. That's a mouthful, but basically it kind of reminds me of like an AI specific Raspberry Pi. It's this tiny little device that actually Jensen Huang pulled out of an oven, I think.
He made a shtick of one of the prior models of taking a whole thing out of an oven, and it was as if they were cooking it at OpenAI. This is what he's pulling out, the big one. Right,
he's pulling out the big one
out of his old oven.
He pulls out.
This is the new
one, the Nano, a palm-sized device. There you go. So
they're calling it an AI supercomputer. Now I don't know whether there's a legal definition of supercomputer, but it's a pretty incredibly powerful thing for $249.
$249.
It's retail AI hardware. I'm just agog by this. And what he's talking about here, I think the main use of this is robotics.
Okay. Yes, that's
so you can have the computer in the device. It's mobile. It's low power. It can do what you want. But clearly, at that price point, imagine what hobbyists could start to put together.
Yeah. Well, and I think even Raspberry Pi has an AI. Is it an AI?
Yeah, I think they do now, right?
Yeah, they have an AI hat, which is, a lot less expensive. It's meant to, I think, attach to your Raspberry Pi because it's a hat, but $70 for that one. So, Nvidia is not the only one, but Nvidia is also, one of the biggest names in AI hardware right now. Continues to be a hot commodity as far as that's concerned. So I think they'll get a lot of pickup on that. I'll be curious to see, like, as people... same with the Raspberry Pi, how are people going to, take this design, this kind of open design, do what you want on the playground with this thing? Like, what are you going to put it to use for? I'm super curious to see how that gets implemented into people's designs.
Yeah.
We shall see. Kevin Roos, I think one of your favorite people at the New York Times, right?
Well, he actually got mad at me for I tweeted, skeeted, etc. this story. You want to describe it first, then I'll say what he said.
Oh, this particular story. Oh, okay. Yeah. I had no idea. I didn't catch that. He wrote on the New York Times about Anthropic's Claude chatbot basically saying, it's rising in popularity with tech aficionados, says it has better emotional intelligence, more thoughtful answers on personal matters. Some consider it to be a best friend sort of thing because it has sensitivity, warmth, it's witty, and it's all related, according to the article, to character training of the chatbot to modulate personality traits. And, of course, critics are critical because using chatbots for emotional support, especially if they're already in a vulnerable state, is potentially a risky endeavor. But so what are your thoughts here?
So my complaint was that and Roos, let's remember, was the guy who, when ChatGPT came out, it fell in love with him and tried to break up his marriage, supposedly. And he lost sleep because of all it was doing. He anthropomorphizes the hell out of this stuff. And he's doing more than anthropomorphizing it here, in my view, is he's celebritizing it. He's making it into a celebrity, into a star. And that's kind of a next step. So he got mad at me when I said that. And he said, it was lazy of me. But I stand by my judgment when I went through the quotes you just came out with. It's a lot of anthropomorphization.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the problem I have with it from two perspectives. From the journalistic perspective, I think that it ill presents this technology. And it leads to people, not just moral panic and all that, but it also leads to people thinking that he makes a point. Nobody thinks it's real. They don't want to be the guy who thought that Lambda at Google was sentient. He makes that point.
Yeah.
But he then goes on, and people are giving it, he's giving it human characteristics. And I just think that's, I think it's not a proper presentation of the technology to the public. On the technology side, well, people are saying, yeah, it's really cool and wonderful because they're always trying to pump it up, and they're trying to argue that it's going to be artificial general intelligence, and they're going to argue that it's going to be human-like. So it plays into their PR hand, and I think that's the wrong thing to do. So he's not happy with me, but fine. Cory Doctorow said, when I put this, because I put it everywhere, I put it in Twitter and Blue Sky and Threads and Mastodon, Cory Doctorow's response was, he's the ideal tech patsy. So have your complaint with Cory, not me, Kevin.
Yeah. So kind of hearing what you're saying about that and having read the article and everything.
Yeah, what'd you think?
I can admit, okay, so I have not spent a lot of focus time with Claude. So I can't speak to any of these claims. But I can say that having used different LLMs for different things, that some of them have, I hate to use the term personality, but some of them have a presentation or something along the lines of a personality that others do not. And so it becomes clear the more you use them that certain ones are good for certain things or better for certain things than others. And to that end, I can kind of see where he's coming from. If people are opening up Claude and asking it certain types of questions and they're getting the answers that, kind of fall in line with the genre of questions that they're asking, I could see why people might feel that way. But it did really strike me and it's something that I'm more and more aware of and trying to balance inside of myself, not anthropomorphizing these systems, because I do think that that goes down a slippery slope. And this article,
and I do it too. I talk about them learning. Are they really learning? Do they think?
Right.
No, they don't.
Right.
Do they know? No, they don't know. As you're talking, I'm thinking that maybe another way to look at personality, and this is my terms as a writer, is voice. That it has a different voice, right? It has a different sound to you. And that's programmable, and it makes a difference in how easy it is to interact with it and how clear it is. And I think that's legitimate. I think that's okay. But personality just goes over the edge to me. Because it doesn't really have one. And if it does appear to, it's because it is manufactured.
Yeah. Well, and as they said in there, it's been character training, to kind of give it more personality traits. That's exactly it. It is manufactured. But does that manufactured personality trait from a business perspective, does giving it those traits actually bring in a certain type of user that's looking for that in that solution?
Yeah, we've seen these concerns about character.ai, and when it tells you to kill somebody, A, it shouldn't do that. B,
sure.
as we've talked many times in the show, it's going to be hard to get guardrails that will prevent all such actions. And C, if you then go do it, you got bigger problems than the technology.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Probably not the AI that made you do anything. Yeah.
No. And that's an issue. And if it affects vulnerable people, that's an issue we have to figure out. But it's just a machine. It's just a word prediction machine. We got to keep coming back to that. It's all it is. It's all it is. It's amazing what it can do, but that's all it is. But this relates to the next story that I threw in.
Yes, please. Yes.
So, Business Insider story: the weirdest job in AI. Anthropic is attending to the welfare of chatbots before they grow up and turn on us. See, this is what drives me nuts about the anthropomorphization. This is what it goes to, right? Yeah. Is that they're going to the company maker of Claude is making such a big deal out of, well, it's so human-like. Does it have rights? Does it have feelings? Should we worry about its welfare? Come on.
And that's laying groundwork for AGI, which is...
Yeah, it is. I mean, you haven't cleaned your lawnmower in 3 years, and, don't be acting like the machine is worthy of this kind of empathy from us, right?
How do you know me, Jeff? How do you know I haven't cleaned my lawnmower in 3 years?
No, I'm betting you have cleaned it. You're an organized guy. I'm betting.
No, I have not. That's one thing that I don't know will ever be on my task list.
Okay, that's good to hear.
That's faced with
rational.
the moment where it's like, oh, okay, yeah.
So now it's a job.
Interesting,
right? Now this is a job of taking AI welfare seriously. And no, I'm sorry. This goes over the border. But that's what I tie that with the Roos story. I think they're all of a piece. And he's playing into their PR angle and then getting angry when he gets called on it. Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah.
You're a good journalist. You're a good tech reporter, but you and AI have a weird relationship growing.
And he's leaning into it. That's his beat. And then before we get to the break, this was a video that you shared with me last week, actually tied to the folks at Mindstudio, which we had them as a guest, I don't know, probably like 6 months ago. Dimitri and Sean Thielen. I can't remember Dimitri's last name off the top of my head. Anyways, CEO of Mindstudio. Tell me what about this video? I watched the whole video. It's definitely interesting. Tell me what caught your imagination, because it seemed like
Dimitri sent
really
me this video saying it's going to blow my mind. And it did to an extent, not because it was otherworldly, but because it was just so well organized. They say you can make a worker. Well, it's an agent, it's a program, it's whatever.
Yeah.
Right. But Mindstudio is a layer on top. In fact, they use Claude. And from a programming perspective, I get it. People like Claude for this reason. And so they assign it to take a 10K from a company, extract a bunch of data, make an analysis, present that, then make a PDF. It cuts it into those pieces. You can see those pieces and see how they operate. And then if you see a problem, well, gee, I think the data here was not quite full enough. You can go to that piece and then go to the instructions, and still in English, it'll show you the code, but you can be blind to the code. Still using your own company, your own language, you can tell it, don't forget about this or do that instead. Or at the end with the PDF, it said, use a cooler font. He was waiting to see how it would define a cool font. Wasn't that cool? Or do this with a design. It was in English. Yeah. So again, to what we said earlier about all the things we talked about at the top of the show, it's iterative, where you're working with it. And what impressed me about this was that it's a layer on top of Claude, so it can do complex tasks. It cut it up into multiple tasks, which are kind of agentic. And it had the openings for iteration. That's what impressed me about this. What did you think of it, Jason?
Yeah, no, I think it was a really great example of really tied into my understanding of Mindstudio from when we talked to Dimitri and Sean, a handful of months ago. And it's cool to kind of see and get a better understanding of the interface and the approach. Having worked with the AI models that I have, it like kind of like this kind of like this, then that approach really starts to demonstrate kind of the capabilities of something like this, because I've done stuff like this, but I've had to be the one taking data from one point to another and then taking the output of that over to another and to do that. And
yes, exactly.
You now get to a point to where most of it can be automated, and the stuff that it doesn't get right. Like, I think what really surprised me and impressed me is from the onset, it got almost everything pretty much nailed. There was just a couple of little details that it really didn't get and that it overlooked, a couple of data points. The formatting was a little funky. And like you said, just use the words, use your words to tell it exactly what you want it to change and at what stage of the process you want it to change, and run from there, and it makes the change. Yeah, it's a cool way of thinking about how to build these systems so that you don't have to go through the complexity of it all.
But it also emphasizes how much human checks are needed, because I wouldn't have noticed where it missed 2 data points. I wouldn't have noticed that. I wouldn't have known that. Dimitri Shapiro is his last name.
There we go.
And obviously it was a demo, but he realizes that, and once realized, can get it fixed. The question is, do you realize it? Do you just take it and say, okay, that's done, good, I'm done for the day, I'm going to go get coffee now? That's the issue, is that you still have to check its work. For
sure. And there are definitely people that will just take the output and be like, oh, see, I'm done. This is better than what I had before, which was nothing. Okay, it's good enough. Versus, I think it's Sean who's doing the demo, I believe. I recognize his voice. And when he discovered that a couple of those data points were missing, he discovered it pretty quick. I was like, okay, wow. Like, you've obviously done these things many times. He's obviously, it's their product, right? He helped design it, so he's very proficient.
But also, if you were an analyst who does this all the time, you're going to be more likely to recognize that it's missing.
For sure. As with any tool, the more you use it, the more you know what to look for, and the faster you get and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, it was a cool example of kind of these agentic tools, and I appreciate you sharing that. That was really neat. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we've got a couple of emails that caught our attention, so we'll read those before we round things out. We'll see you in a second. All right. We haven't done emails on this show before, but we certainly can, and we're happy to kind of play around with it and bring a little bit more of the community into the show as it makes sense. contact@aiinside.show is a direct email address if you want to send stuff to us. You can also go to aiinside.show, the website, and there is a form that you can fill out if you want to send an email to us that way. But I have this first email. I thought it was an interesting thing sent in from DJ Rout. This is a little while ago. I've been holding on to this. Says, I've just discovered that Copilot can do art, pictures based on descriptions you write for it. Sometimes. The guardrails are up, and it refuses to do things which it considers problematic. Now, I will accept that Robert E. Lee is problematic. Not in Australia, he isn't. This led me to the idea that guardrails are another way of imposing American culture hegemony on the rest of the world. It won't discuss Robert E. Lee, any modern brands, or anachronistic foodstuffs, fictional characters with the same names of real people, and other stuff I haven't bumped into yet. Copilot doesn't do things that some Americans find objectionable, so all of us, even those of us not writing descriptions in English, are being guarded or corralled into thinking not only like Americans, but that we are Americans. Robert E. Lee isn't problematic in Australia. Well, maybe he should be. I'm getting my money's worth out of patronizing you two too. Thank you both. Thank you, DJ, for being a patron. Thank you for sending this in. I just thought it was an interesting thing. I feel like we've kind of talked a little bit about this in the past, but I thought it was worth bringing back up, right?
No, I thought it was really interesting because it hits 2 things. It hits the whole discussion of guardrails, which we've had often, but I hadn't seen it enough in this cultural context. Which is the same problem that exists in moderating social media. that unless you have
Right.
local sensibilities, you're going to miss things in certain countries. There are things you can say in Australia that would be offensive, but American setting up the guardrails wouldn't know that. That's one side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side of it is the things that are offensive here in the U.S. aren't elsewhere. And, there's one, I'm not going to say the word, but there's one word that is impressively offensive in the United States that is used constantly in England and Ireland as both an insult and a joshing word. I'm not going to say it because I would get in big trouble here. But if I were in the UK, nobody would bat an eye. Once I was on the BBC live and I was thinking the S word, but I had to stop myself and edit myself. And instead I said crap. Well, it turns out, I apologize to all my British fans right now, that was horrendous and I got cut off the air.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
I wasn't even. Okay.
I got dumped.
Because here that's like a PG.
Yeah, that's the safe version.
Word.
Right?
Yeah, that's the safe
That
word.
was terrible there.
Interesting. That's
so
fascinating.
Cultural sensitivities next to AI, that's why it's a really fascinating email, because if you think you can build guardrails, the machine is going to fool you and the users are going to fool you because they're going to try to get around them. But you're also going to have to build them with cultural sensitivities. And nobody's talking about that I know of in AI right now.
No, totally.
It all starts with US. Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly why when I read this email, I was like, that is a really, really interesting point. Talk about accessibility, talk about representation, all these things that are wrapped up in these models and who's creating them and who's behind them and everything. This is yet another example of that is that the cultural sensitivity aspect is going to depend on the locale. And that doesn't always line up. And so what does that mean? What are we teaching others when they use that tool, and they can't find out this information on something they didn't even know was, in the US was off limits or whatever. Yeah, it's interesting. Thank you, DJ, for sending that in. Is it DJ or is it Rout? I'm not sure. Either way, we appreciate having you on board. Thank you. Len has been frequently sending me some really interesting feedback and stuff via email. So Len, always good to hear from you. Sent in this that was completely off my radar. Len said, I wanted to tell you about a free year of Perplexity Pro, which, by the way, happens to be the AI service that I use probably the most, through Xfinity Rewards. That's Comcast Xfinity Rewards. He says, I accidentally saw this while setting my dad up for the military discount at Xfinity. You do not need a military discount to get this perk because my dad is waiting for verification. I didn't know if this might be useful to you, Jeff, or your viewers and listeners. Xfinity has many customers in the US, that is true, and probably many of your viewers and listeners have it. And so I am actually a Comcast subscriber, unfortunately. And
when his video blurps, blame Comcast.
Yeah. And, no, come back. Oh, dang. And so I logged into my Comcast account, realized I was not signed up for Comcast Rewards or whatever they call it. So I did. And sure enough, there at the top of the page was a thing that basically said, get a year of Perplexity Pro on us. And unfortunately, because I am already a Perplexity user, it does not apply to me. It's only for new users, but you can get a code through there.
You could use a different email address, I think, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And this was interesting. When you read the fine print of it, it says the code is good for up to 5 activations. So you can give it to your friends and family. And so essentially you can spread around the love. I'm going to get my wife a Perplexity account. Actually, it's down here. What does it say? This promotion is open to active Xfinity Rewards members. Existing Pro account holders are ineligible to sign up by August 29th, 2025 using the code that you get. Your unique promo code can be used up to 8 times. 8 times. So basically each code is good for up to 8 subscriptions, which kind of blows my mind. But then at the same time, I'm like, okay, is Perplexity hurting or like
they're trying to build, well, so let me tell you what, let me add to this, then we'll discuss that.
Yes.
So okay. I found out when I went looking for this, because Jason talked to me, and I'm a FiOS user, so I don't get that. However, there's free Perplexity Pro out of colleges. Earlier this year, Perplexity ran a competition in which any college student with an EDU email address could claim a free month of Perplexity Pro. If more than 500 students from the same campus signed up, the entire campus got a free year. 45 schools made the mark, and I went looking, and one of the schools I'm now affiliated with, Stony Brook University, where I have an email address, is one of them. And so I got a year at Perplexity Pro through Stony Brook. Yeah. Back to your point, Jason, is I think what we see here is the beginnings of Perplexity trying to be a consumer media platform and brand. And they've got to build audience and building. And I can say this from having worked in the business my whole life. When I started a magazine, when I worked on digital sites, when I worked on anything, subscriber acquisition cost is what nobody ever talks about. It's the marketing cost. When I started Entertainment Weekly magazine, we spent $45 each to acquire a subscriber with all the market, all the junk mail we sent out, everything else we did. So what Perplexity is trying to do here is subscriber acquisition. So they're hoping that if they got you hooked for a year, you'll keep paying. They're also putting in advertising, so they want an audience for that. So I think this is the beginnings of a consumer B2C strategy.
Interesting. Meanwhile, my recurring, cost for another year is going to be $200. Either that or I sign up on my personal account for the next year. But then I got to move all, I got to like re-enter all my like spaces and set all those up, which isn't the end of the world, but so I don't know what I'm going to do, but it is interesting to me nonetheless, because I really enjoy using Perplexity. Like I literally use it every single day for my work. And, so, worth knowing and worth checking out. That's great that you got it. I'll be curious to hear how it kind of, if it catches you the way it has caught me and how you use it and everything. I'm sure we'll talk about that in 2025. Cool stuff. Well, Len, thank you so much for sending that in. Hopefully that helps at least a couple of viewers and listeners. I'm sure it does. Puts it on your radar. Go get it. We've reached the end of this, our last live episode of AI Inside for the year 2024. Jeff Jarvis, what a fun year. I'm so happy that we do this show together.
Absolutely. What an amazing year.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. With you and through you. So thank you for being here.
Oh, and same back, boss. Same back.
Right on. I appreciate that. JeffJarvis.com.
Thank you all, the audience. We're grateful to you all and for
indeed.
Your contributions and for being here and for helping out. This is a new venture we're trying to do, and thank you.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And you can buy some books
you're
too.
Getting,
yeah.
Well, and of course, Jeff also has books. The Web We Weave, Gutenberg parenthesis, magazine, all found at jeffjarvis.com. Yeah, I mean, I think, we've said it many times. We're learning via this show. And hopefully, I'm imagining a lot of you are learning along with us. The people who are really steeped in AI, maybe they aren't the ones, because they're like, oh, well, they're not talking about this or that or whatever. But, I like to think that we're talking to people who are kind of learning along with us about all this.
Well, we had
stuff,
people from Google who watched This Week in Google, even though they knew more about it than we did. But it's about the reaction to things, the work they're doing, I think it matters too. So I bet we have some AI folks in here,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And when we get things wrong, tell us.
Yeah, please do. Contact at aiinside.show. Everything you need to know about this show can be found at our website. Go there. aiinside.show is the place. You can subscribe to the podcast so that the next 2 weeks of pre-recorded episodes, you don't miss those. They'll, end up both on the site itself, but also in your RSS feed. And you won't miss that. So do that. Also, if you want to support on a deeper level, you can go to patreon.com/AIInsideShow. We have some amazing patrons supporting us. Right now, 82 paid members. More than that when you consider people who are following for free. And then, that's okay too. That gets you through the door. And then maybe we provide value for you through, ad-free shows, Discord, Hangouts that we do. If you want, you can give even more and you get a t-shirt, an AI Inside t-shirt for becoming an executive producer. And we've got good news. We've got a new one. Dr. Du, Jeffrey Maricini, WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina, Paul Lang, Ryan Newell, and our newest executive producer, Dante St. James.
Yay.
Amazing.
Thank you, Dante. So many bosses. We need them.
So many bosses. I need 2 hands to show it on my fingers.
And when you go to that page, by the way, you have to go to the right to get to the executive producer one. It doesn't show that right away. So you have to scroll to the right to see that.
Truth. There you
Okay,
go.
just
It's
so you
called
know,
Mega
that's
AI.
where it is.
Maybe I should call that executive producer, because that really is what we
that's
say
what it
on the
is.
show. And that's what I'll make that change. But yes, you all enable us to do this show, and we just can't thank you enough. So thank you so much for being here all year with us, for helping us build and grow and be what we are. And here's looking to 2025 in the hopes that we can build and grow and be even more than we already are. Thank you, Jeff. It's been a fun year. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. We'll see you next time on another episode of AI Inside. Take care, everybody.